A week after graduation, I flew out to Buffalo, New York to prove myself to the coach Brian Dempsey. I had two future NFL players on my offense in Aljae Henderson, my running back, and Jamari Gassett, my number one wide receiver. Coach appreciated how much dedication I showed to learning the playbook and his system. Over the course of the summer, I earned the starting job at quarterback over sophomore Cole Snyder. We needed to prepare a lot over the summer because we did not want to get punked by Ohio State. Coach wanted to ease me into my first college game against the number 2 team in the nation by focusing on running the football. He didn't ask me to make too many throws down the field to begin with, and he wanted to help me limit my turnover issues. The team had success in recent years, going to bowl games in 2 of the last 3 seasons and getting their best win in school history in 2019 in a bowl game against Charlotte. Aljae was going off, making future NFL players on this defense look like Pee Wee players. He was trucking dudes and breaking tackles at a ridiculous rate. If I said I wasn't a little nervous playing this team in our first game, I'd be lying. Despite the prep, I noticed I was second guessing my reads a little bit, and so did Coach. He started drawing up a lot of design pass plays. I mean, wide receiver screens, short throws underneath, and simple 3-step dropbacks. I think it hurt the flow of our offense. When our coach called a 2 tight end set with Malinik, I was already a bit on edge. We still had 0 points, and I felt like it was all my fault. Then Malinik dropped the ball on the throw underneath. When I went over to the sideline, I let the dude absolutely have it. I basically told him he should convert to O-line with those brick hands. I definitely wasn't doing myself any favors trying to get my teammates to like me. Our defense was playing out of their minds. At the start of the second quarter, the score was 0-0. No thanks to us on offense. I could tell the Ohio State defensive coordinator was losing it, even though we still had 0 points. Our backup running back Robinson was also a great receiving back, but he took a nasty hit on the screen. On our first option play of the day, I get hit and fumbled the ball, leading to our first turnover, something that we just couldn't afford versus this team. I continued to rely on Gassett and Navarro to get open and get yards after the catch. Aljae was fighting off contact consistently on his runs like we had already seen, channeling his inner Marshawn Lynch. I was playing really well outside of the structure of the offense, but that isn't why I came to Buffalo. I wanted to become an elite pocket QB, and bailing myself out by using my athleticism wasn't helping me to get better as a passer. I found Navarro underneath, and he did the rest of the work, making multiple defenders miss on his way to picking up a 25-yard gain and getting us in the red zone before half. Aljae was having a historic game for this Buffalo program when he went down holding his leg right before half. The whole team was holding their breath. Aljae was the spiritual and emotional leader of this team. As a freshman quarterback and someone who already struggled with leadership at a high school level, I definitely didn't know how to channel my own ability to inspire my teammates still. To start the third quarter, Ohio State turned the ball over on their own side of the field. My offensive line parted the seas for me, leaving me plenty of time to dissect the zone defense for our first touchdown of the game to my tight end Claude, giving us a 7-point lead. Ohio State answered back immediately, and we were locked up at 10-10 at the beginning of the fourth. Coach pulled me aside and told me that we were going to start chewing clock and running the ball, but also to look for my moments to play make. Aljae was back and being a beast on the ground, and Karan Robinson was ripping off some great runs too. Justin Marshall ultimately made a huge play, racking up 20 yards on a wide receiver screen that got us into field goal range. Sadly, we weren't able to get a touchdown on the drive, and Ohio State answered the field goal that we got. So we were tied again at 13-13. We had about 30 seconds left in the game from our own 20-yard line, and I tried to play superhero. I swore I saw Bobby Curry wide open over the middle, but Ohio State's inside linebacker, Proctor, picked me off, and I was sure the game was over. They were already in field goal range, and I had put my towel over my head on the sideline, feeling sorry for myself. Somehow, they missed the field goal. We got blessed. We ended up going into overtime, and Aljae made a statement play. He took this underneath pass all the way for a touchdown, tying us again, and then I made the play of my young career. Everything I didn't want to rely on is what made this play happen. Nothing was open on the initial routes, so I ran to my right. I noticed Jamari following me to the back right corner of the end zone, and I flicked a laser to him. He got his feet in, and we took a touchdown lead. Ohio State couldn't answer, and we pulled off the biggest upset in college football history. If we were in Buffalo, I'm sure the fans would have gone absolutely crazy and rushed the stands, but instead, Ohio State fans were throwing bottles, cups, and popcorn at their own team. After the game, all of us went out partying in Ohio, celebrating before what was bound to be a legendary season for the Bulls. After our first game against Ohio State, most of my teammates felt that we should be in the top 25. I mean, it only made sense after knocking off the second best team in the nation. Our next game came against Baylor, and they were also 1-0. On our first drive, it was an absolute disaster. Coach could sense how confident I had become after our first game, and he started with a pass play, but I took a sack that set us back 18 yards because I was trying to extend the play. Baylor's defense came to play. They made every yard, every first down a struggle. We found ourselves down 10-0 in this rain game. and I felt like I was legitimately carrying the offense. I was throwing dots, finding Gassett, Curry, and Claude wide open for big first down pickups. Claude and Navarre were really stepping up. Each of them were getting a lot of yards after the catch and making big explosive plays for us. So it felt like this drive had to end in a touchdown for us. We had all the momentum. I was making defenders miss, and it felt like we could do no wrong on offense. Even some of our backups like LeBourne were making big plays. We got down into the red zone where on 3rd and 10 we were placed in a tough spot. Despite being incredibly accurate on the drive, Coach had us run a halfback screen that didn't pick up the first down. We ended up missing the chip shot field goal and not making any progress. You'd think I wouldn't be feeling a lot of pressure coming off of our week 1 win, but now we had expectations. My coach and teammates expected us to win against Baylor. Obviously, Baylor couldn't be as good as Ohio State, right? I'll be honest, I was immature. I think I started to get rattled thinking about some of the expectations surrounding my play. Back when I was in high school, I had teammates who lifted me up and made me a better player. With Buffalo, it didn't feel the same yet. While I had spent about the same amount of time with his team, we didn't spend nearly as much time together off the field. A lot of us had different goals outside of football, going to different programs all the way across campus. A lot of the guys on this team were also from New York. They had friends outside of school and I didn't. The one guy who always made sure, though, to invite me to their family barbecues this last summer was Jamari Gassett. The dude was just a great teammate and a great friend. It was important that we developed that QB wide receiver chemistry as much as possible, but it didn't feel like we had that versus Baylor. We needed a touchdown and we needed it now. Coach continued to limit my ability to throw the ball down the field, calling short pass plays the last 2 drives. Ultimately, not being more aggressive is what put the nail in the coffin for us. After we couldn't score with 4 minutes left in the 4th, we fell behind 24-3 and the game was effectively over. We were stunned. We had just come off the biggest upset in college football history and we delivered a dud in Texas. We were inept offensively, and I was at least partially to blame. After the game, everyone went their separate ways. Nobody wanted to meet to go over game film for next week, so I did it by myself. I definitely felt isolated after letting the team down. Coach called me into his office the next day after the game to discuss what happened, and then he dropped some news on me. So, after the Baylor game, I got benched for Cole Snyder. I sat on the bench for 6 games waiting to earn the job back. After starting out 1-2 and beating the number 2 team in the nation, our record slipped to 3-5 since I was benched. I'd like to say that I was grinding to get my job back, but really I was more like Alex Moran from Blue Mountain State. I was chilling, just going through the motions and not taking being the backup quarterback too seriously. So when Coach Dempsey inserted me into the starting lineup for a snow game at home versus a 6-2 Ohio team, I didn't get any sleep Friday night before the game. I got my roommate to give me some of his Adderall so I could stay locked in studying Ohio's defense and their star corners Torrey Cox Jr. and Chris Atkinson. Especially with this weather and the wind, my passes were floating like crazy. I just didn't have the required arm talent to win this game through the air, but I had several mental lapses trying to pass the ball instead of just tucking it and running it. It felt like the Ohio guys had a field day picking off my passes. Each time they celebrated, it was like a punch to the gut. But it didn't stop with just 2 interceptions. The interceptions continued to pile up as the field got harder and harder to see. It was a borderline whiteout. That game was a wake-up call. It made me realize that I couldn't just coast through being the backup QB. I had to step up and take my role seriously. From that moment on, I poured my heart and soul into being the best quarterback I could be. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready to put in the work, both on and off the field. That snow game was just the beginning of my journey to reclaim my position and prove that I had what it takes to lead a team to victory. Justin Marshall was balling for sure, getting himself a touchdown catch, but when I tried to make the game closer in the 4th quarter, I hit Booby Curry right in the hands over the top and he dropped it. The very next play, my 5th interception. I was surprised Coach didn't pull me, but I think he was in shock at this point. We had fallen so far as a team this season, from the high of beating Ohio State to the low of losing to Ohio and throwing 5 interceptions in the process. We ended up losing the game 24-6, and unsurprisingly, I ended up getting benched for the remainder of the season. Our final record ended up being 5-7, and Coach told me that he wanted to give me a heads up that I should transfer because he was getting a quarterback in the transfer portal to fill Cole Snyder and I's spots at quarterback. I decided to go back to Seattle early in March to think it over. In the offseason and during the transfer portal, I started working at a waste removal company to make some extra money since I didn't have any NIL deals. I ended up slipping between 2 stairs and badly injuring my ankle, almost fracturing it. I was feeling sorry for myself. I started to gain weight, going from 185 pounds up to 215 pounds, and not the good kind of weight. Eventually, my family helped me pull out of that depression depression, and I started volunteering. I started to worry less about childish things like my self-image and the popularity of myself, and I wanted to become a leader. I wanted people to trust me, and I wanted to help them achieve their dreams, unlike what happened in Buffalo. Although I will say that Jamari Gassett, my wide receiver, and Alge Henderson, my running back, did end up making the NFL. Gassett got drafted in the 4th round, and Alge got drafted in the early 3rd.